Okay, so in this video, we'll be taking a look at my Vim setup using Bundle to manage the various plugins that I use, as well as some custom Vim RC configurations I have. Okay, so the tech stack we'll be taking a look at is, of course, we need Vim. We also need Git, which will allow us to pull the various plugins that we'll be using, as well as some customized Vim RC configurations. So my current setup for Vim in a nutshell is actually pretty simple. All I need is a visualization of the file system on the project I'm working on within Vim, as well as a way to easily search files, and of course syntax highlighting for the various programming languages that I use. Often these days it's Ruby, the Rails framework, Python, as well as web technologies, HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. So first things first, we need to have Vim installed on Ubuntu or Debian based systems. That can be easily done by issuing the command sudo apt install vim, as well as sudo apt install git. Now, to get Bundle working, you have to install Bundle first as an extension for Vim by issuing the command git clone, followed by the GitHub URL of Bundle, and dump it to the location .vim from your home directory in the directory bundle, followed by bundle.vim. So the instructions for this can be found in Bundle's GitHub page. Now, to install a plugin, it's actually pretty simple. You include the plugin name in your .vim RC file in your home directory with the following syntax: plugin followed by often the author of that plugin / the name of the plugin. If you read through Bundle's documentation, you can see there are other formats wherein you can pull a plugin from a specific Git repository, as well as other various formats, but the most basic of which is the following: plugin author / plugin name. Now, even before using Bundle, you have to have the following configuration in your .vim RC file. If you go to Bundle's GitHub page, it's actually a lengthier version, so I stripped it down to its bare minimum. So go ahead and type it. I have a fresh user here without the plugins installed yet, so without a Vim RC file yet. So let's go ahead and create that Vim RC file. So from your home directory, represented by the tilde, you have a .vim RC file. So we first say set no compatible, which is often the default for Vim these days. So set file type off, RTP plus equals. So you can essentially copy paste this from Bundle's site. I'm just using again the bare minimum. Okay, so as you can see within the lines Bundle begin and Bundle end, this is the section where you would put in your various Bundle plugins. And as you can see, Bundle itself is also a plugin. So we manage it by saying plugin, or you configure it by saying plugin bundle vim / bundle.vim. Okay, and then right. So this is the bare minimum that we need to get Bundle to work. So you save the file, and in order to install a plugin, you open up Vim again, reset Vim, and call in the command plugin install. On the left hand side, you'll see that the plugins will be pulled and downloaded into your Vim installation. Once you see done, then it means that the plugins that you've installed are currently done. Alright, before we go through the plugins that I'm using, let me just show you a few configuration files configurations for my Vim RC that I have. So usually the first thing I do is I change the map key, the leader key to comma. So I say let map leader be equal to comma. Now there's actually a purpose for this, as we'll see later on. So I'll say let map leader equal to comma. So for me, naturally, The comma is much closer or much more natural to shift when I want to use the various plugins that we'll see later on. So I have map leader set to comma. Okay, I also have a wide variety of configurations. It's pretty simple. I like to have set expand tab. I'd like to have the line numbers shown by default. And I'd like to have my tabs have a measure of 2 spaces instead of the default of 4. And I'd like to convert my tabs into spaces. Okay. So I guess the main takeaway here is that display line numbers, set tabs to a width of 2, set spaces for tabs. And also I don't want to generate the swap files for Vim. So this is a common mistake I have when dealing with some projects when using Vim, because whenever I use Vim, without this configuration, it actually generates a swap file, a .swp file. And if I fail to include or if I fail to ignore the swap files, it often gets included in the project's repository when I push it into Git or some other code versioning system. So I'd like to say set no swap file. Okay, other configurations include the following. So usually I'd like to be disciplined in terms of using Vim by turning off the functions for the arrow keys. Okay, so for this configuration, I like to turn off the usage for the left, right, up, down arrow keys by saying no, and no remap for left, okay, no operation, as well as for the right, up, and down arrow keys. So this one is especially useful if you want to keep the navigation for Vim to your typical JKL navigation or HJKL navigation keys. Also, I'd like to remove the highlight whenever I try to search for a term in Vim. So I do that by saying no remap for no HL search. Sorry. And I say set HL search. I think this should be included here. Okay, so that's a wide variety of configurations. But more importantly, I guess, is to turn off the arrow keys and turn off the highlights for searching. Okay, so this is my current plugin configuration. As you can see, I have a bunch of plugins for Ruby, for JavaScript, for JSX, for React.js. But we'll just take a look at the more basic ones. Specifically Nerdtree as well as Control P. Okay, let's go to the first plugin, Nerdtree. So just like the Vundle plugin, we include that configuration in between the lines Vundle begin and Vundle end. Okay, let me just reload Vim after doing that configuration and editing or re-editing my Vim RC file. As you can see, I have a bunch of line numbers already displayed when I opened up Vim. So let's go ahead and include the plugin Nerdtree in the middle of these lines right here. So we'll say plugin Screwloose, the author of Nerdtree. Okay. And just like our Vundle, we'll actually save the file first, reopen Vim, and issue plugin install. Okay, so it will download Nerdtree. I had it downloaded earlier, and Nerdtree is now installed in your Vim installation. Now, before we can use Nerdtree, the configuration I usually do is the following. So I can put the configuration probably somewhere here. Okay. Okay, so I map my Nerdtree toggle, the key that you use to open up Nerdtree, using my leader command, which is currently set to comma from earlier right here, followed by n. Okay, so it's much more natural, at least for me, to use comma n to open up the file system or the visualization of the file system in the project I'm currently working on. Okay, so we configure it using no remap leader n colon nerd3 toggle. I also set nerd3 chdir mode to 2 as well as nerd3 show hidden to 1. So for the various plugins that you install, if you take a look at their documentation, they have a bunch of variables that you can configure for that particular plugin. So in my case, this configuration will allow me to use nerd3, but let's say when I open up Vim, the file system directory will not be shown by default. I actually have to issue the command leader n followed by nerd3 toggle in order for nerd3 to appear. Okay, so let's try that. I'll save this configuration file, open up Vim again, and if I hit my leader key, which is comma followed by n, you can see that the file system is now visualized in the left-hand side of the screen. Okay, so now that we have nerd3 working, the next plugin that I'll install is the Control P plugin. So this plugin allows me to search for files within the current directory. So we'll install it just like we installed our nerd3 plugin. We'll edit our vimrc file. And again, in our section for bundle plugins, we'll include the line plugin can ctrlp.vim. Okay, close Vim, open it up again, and issue plugin install. Okay, so this will attempt to download the Control P plugin. Now while that's downloading, okay, you can see here a bunch of configurations I have for Control P. Okay, open up a new terminal so we can get started on its configuration. So in the first line, Control P chdir. Okay, this is the configuration where the various cache, or rather the directory where Control P will attempt to store its cache files. Okay, so we have it right here. Okay, so from home directory concatenated with a .temp directory followed by Control P. Okay, the next configuration will be the key that will issue the Control P plugin. I currently have it set to Control P. And this third line will be a bunch of directories that Control P will ignore. Okay, meaning, if it detects this particular pattern, it will not search those directories for the search term that you issued. So usually, this will be the Git directory. If you're using Mercurial, you'd also like to include the Mercurial directory HG. If you're using SVN, of course, the SVN directory. Okay, your doc for Rails. Okay, just minimize this so we can see the various configurations. Okay. Most of these configurations are specific to the different frameworks I'm using, specifically Rails, so I usually ignore the public directory in Rails because you don't usually search for anything in there. So as the log directories, node modules, temp directories, right? Okay, so for this new line, I'd also like to ignore files with the following extensions. Okay, so the first one, the configuration for directories where Control P will not search for certain files. The second configuration will be to not search for files with the extensions .exe. Of course, I'm using Linux, so this won't actually apply to me. .so files, which will be Linux binary files, or Linux library files rather, as well as .dat files, mock files, CPP parameters files, .o files, and CPP objects. Right, so it won't attempt to search those particular files. And of course, you can include your own configuration as needed. Okay. Now, the third configuration I have right here will be the max height, which will be the height of the height of Control P that will show the search results of the file you're trying to search. Okay, try to demo that later on. Okay, so I have Control P installed, save vimrc, exit vim, and let's try to see if Control P is currently working. Okay, so let's say I have a project called my project. Let's say I have it in my desktop. Okay, and then let's say I have a bunch of directories, dir1, dir2, and dir3. Oh, sorry. Rather make dir1, dir2, let's say 2 directories. Okay, so let's try out nerd-tree. So I hit the command "n." You'll see dir1 and dir2 right there. You can actually create files from nerd-tree by issuing the command "m" when it's highlighted in the current directory. And you can see here a bunch of options to add a child node, which is a file. And usually you just be needing either to add a child node or to delete a certain file. So for example, if I want to add a child node, after issuing the command "m", I issue the command "a", and if I want to add a file, let's say config.txt, as you can see here, okay, it adds that file to that directory. Okay, and we have config.txt right there. Of course, if you want to add another subdirectory, again from the parent directory dir1, you issue the command "m", followed by "a". Now to add the directory, let's say subdir, you add a slash together with the name to indicate that it is a directory. Okay, and then you can navigate the different directory structures using the typical JK up-down navigation for Vim. And from subdir, you can add your own, let's say you have a data file, .csv file right there, and this one will be your directory structure. So everything can be done from within Vim without having to use, let's say, a file manager to look for certain files. All right, so let's say I want to look for these files. Let's try Control P. Now the thing is, if you add a new file and you want to include it in the cache for Control P, I usually reset Vim to make sure that it's searchable by Control P. So I've added these 2 files. If I quit Vim and go to my project again, if I try to search for data.csv, all I have to do is hit Control P and search for the file data.csv. Search. Okay, let's try it again. Okay, I might be missing something. Control P. Okay, so I go back to our configuration file. Okay. So let's remove this in the meantime. No, Control P. this in the meantime. Okay, there we go. Okay, so oh, I can't search for CSV because I don't have it ignored. Right. So let's try that again. Okay, so if I want to search for config, you can see that it gets highlighted there. If I want to search for data.csv, as you can see, it gets highlighted there. I can put my files right there, save it. Okay, if I'm editing another file and like to bring up data.csv, I just hit Control P and it brings it up right there. So those are the most basic things that I need when using Vim. Okay, I'm not sure why this thing did not work. I think it caused an error for that. And there you have it. Okay, the 2 essential Vim plugins for basic Vim usage. Okay, so that's it.